So I guess we're going to start this again. Welcome to our council meeting, regular council meeting of October 22nd. We're going to start with the Lord's Prayer. Please remain seated. Anybody wishes to join me can do so. Our Father, art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Dean, call to order, please.
Mover and seconder, please.
Brian and Wendy.
Moved by Councillor Ugly, second by Councillor Hewitt, that the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 be called to order at 5:30.
All in favor? Thank you. Dean, roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Present?
Reeve Watt.
Present.
Councillor Gauthier.
Present.
Councillor Hewitt.
Present.
Councillor Ugly.
Present.
Councillor King. Councillor Wren.
Present.
All members present except for Councillor King.
Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. Jennifer and Alan.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor Wren, that the agenda of the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, seeing none. Minutes and notes, motion for September 24th minutes. Keith and Wendy.
Moved by Reeve Watt, second by Councillor Hewitt, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held September 24, 2024 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Motion for October 8th. Jennifer and Brian.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor Ugly, that the minutes of the council and committee meeting held October 8, 2024 be accepted by council and that the resolutions from that committee become resolutions of council.
All in favor? Carried. Down to municipal reports, CAO report. Any questions or comments for Dean? Seeing none. Treasurer's report. We will see Sean shortly. Public Works for Mark. Any questions? Brian.
I just have one question. They finished the bridge on 24 now. Is there any discussion with the county with regards to Sawmill Road? Because I did notice it did kind of go downhill some, even though they tried to steer people away from it, it was the main route for the detour.
Yeah, so it's a discussion I think we're going to have, and something that will, I guess, be coming to council later. When I have more information, there are going to be some upcoming detours on Highway 41 and Highway 17 next year for some culvert replacements. And some of the suggestions we're using some of our township roads and or in that area, and Sawmill was kind of one impacted. So and during that discussion, the county was there, and I did allude to the fact that it got a lot more traffic than what it was supposed to, and that with MTO's detours in the area, that there has to be a lot better protection, barricades or something to protect it. So, but yeah, we'll have to have a discussion with the county because it has deteriorated considerably from the amount of traffic that cut through.
Al.
So just as a side to that, a lot of that traffic on Sawmill then wound up on Robinson.
Yeah, there seemed to be some east-west cut through that people kind of figured out it was quicker, and unfortunately we had two roads that took a lot of that traffic.
Okay. Planners report. Lori's not here tonight. And you've got my report. It was a busy month for sure. I can add to that that I did go to Pleasant View on Sunday for their 40th anniversary. It was very well attended between there and the Children's Garden Nursery. So lots of kids, lots of fun. It went over very well and the weather cooperated. And I was at the Warming Center meeting today with Councillor Gauthier at the county, which I'll bring council up to date later. Al?
Any update on the development off of Robinson Lane, the Starbucks and that development in there seems to be at a standstill, or?
Yeah, I did speak to the owner of the lands and the developer, I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks ago, and he was having trouble getting a contractor. So I don't think it's gonna happen this year. Well, you can pretty well tell it's not gonna happen this year, but he certainly still wants to move forward, but hopefully by next year as a contractor to get it going.
Thank you.
I believe also I spoke to the planner and to Dean regarding planner will bring us up to date by year end on any of the developments we have in Laurentian Valley. So hopefully in December we'll get an update on that. Nothing else there, then get a motion.
Yes, please.
Jennifer and Alan.
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Counselor Wren, that the council receive the following reports from mid-September to mid-October 2024 at a regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024. CEO's report, treasurer's report, public works report, planner's CMC report, and the mayor's report.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, so, we'll start with Sean, once he settles in.
Doesn't break the place.
First item of business is the cross-country request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a grant request from the Pembroke Area Cross Country Ski Club, or PAX. Basically, they're requesting $2,000 for the snow removal in their parking lot. This is something that during the 2024 budget deliberations we were aware of, as we've supported this request for many years. The line item that it was budgeted from had an $8,000 budget amount, and the couple groups that we knew that were out of that line item were the Mixburg Cultural Center and PAX, and then last year also the Warming Center was supported from this line item. So we were aware that this was likely going to be coming as a request, but throughout the year, the township did support a local initiative in some doctor recruitment in the amount of $6,000 that came from this line item. So to date, before supporting PAX, this line item is $600 over budget, but this was known about during our budget deliberations and as something that we've supported in the past. Like I said, it just happens to be that their calendar, traditionally we've supported them in end of Q3, early Q4 of our calendar year. That's before really the winter gets going for them, so they have the cash in hand before their season. So it's just that timing difference of it's at near the end of our season, but it's at really the beginning of theirs. So I did right here how they have met everything except for one little item of our policy. So anyway, I'll turn that back to the mayor for comments or questions.
Any questions? Al?
So just a comment on the history of that at one point the municipality plowed that parking lot with our trucks. And the agreement with the ski club was that they would take over the plowing of it, but the municipality would help out each and every year in order to plow. It's just so that our trucks weren't spending that time in there plowing a parking lot. So that's kind of the history of it.
Okay.
And I would support the $2,000.
Okay. Seconder? Jennifer?
Moved by Counselor Wren, second by Counselor Gauthier, that the Corporate Services Committee council recommend to approve the grant request from Pembroke Area Cross Country Ski Club.
All in favor? Carried. Next item is asset management policy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a policy that council originally adopted I believe in 2019. And this was really the first requirement that the province set out in the new era of asset management. As part of the regulation, this policy has to be looked at every 5 years. So in 2024, I guess technically July 1, 2024 would have been 5 years, but that council at least has to look at. There may not be any major changes, but that's just brought to the table. Staff felt that during this process that we should get through our asset management plan and kind of bring it at the same time as the policy, just to see if going through that process of the plan would have created any changes to the policy, as opposed to earlier in the year just trying to meet the deadline, passing a policy, and then maybe having to update it again by year end. So that's why it's coming tonight. There was just minor changes. There was nothing, there's nothing major in the policy from the original version, other than just some updates to some terms and some dates. So this is pretty immaterial change. It's just, it's for the record, we're bringing it forward for part of the regulation.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Any questions of council, comments? See none, need a motion? Keith and Brian?
Moved by Reeve Watts, second by Councillor Ugly, that the council approve the amended policy FIN 08, Strategic Asset Management Policy as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Sean?
Okay, thank you. And this is the last one I have tonight, but probably the bigger one. But so apologies that this kind of came out a little bit later than the agenda. We were originally going to plan on bringing the finished version of the asset management plan to the first meeting in November, but because of the agenda tonight and we're about to go through a budget process, this is probably a good time to bring it. So it's a little bit rushed to get through it and get it out. And the original version we did send out definitely had some typos in it, and we think we fixed most of them, maybe not all, but most. So again, apologies that it wasn't on the original agenda. I did provide council with a bound copy of the asset management plan that's on your desk. And I think it's easier if I take some time to go through some aspects of it. And you have it in front of you and you make notes, or maybe it's easier to see than on your screens. But I think it's the first we'll go to is page 3. And actually, before I get started, I just want to thank Chris for the design work on this. So the way that this document is presented is very professional, and Chris did he crammed in a lot of time to make it that way. That is not my expertise, and you would not like the document I would have given you. So Chris deserves a lot of kudos for the way this document looks, at least in my opinion. But in the first section here, just the timeline. So July 1, 2019, we had to prepare a policy, which we did. By July 1, 2022, we should have had an asset management plan for core infrastructure assets. July 1, 2024, have an asset management plan for all infrastructure assets. And notice infrastructure, not necessarily all assets, but infrastructure assets. And then in 2025, update the asset management plan to include proposed levels of service and life cycle management strategy and a financial strategy to address those shortfalls. So that is in the regulation. We feel, is our opinion, that we have an asset management plan that is now compliant to the July 1, 2025 regulation. And just, if we can go, Lori, to that page just at the bottom where it says asset management. So our definition of asset management we took from the Canadian Network of Asset Managers. And it's asset management is an integrated approach involving all organization and departments. So it's not just a finance thing. It's not just a transportation thing. It involves all departments to effectively manage existing and new assets to deliver services to customers. The intent is to maximize benefits, reduce risk, and provide satisfactory levels of service to the community in a sustainable manner, providing an optimum balance. Good asset management practices are fundamental to achieving sustainable communities. So what we really liked about this definition is that it involves all departments. It speaks to reducing risk, which is something that maybe we don't think of a lot, but our assets, or every asset we have, does pose some type of risk, and it's our job to minimize that risk. And then provide satisfactory. So we're not saying providing like optimal or providing highest level. We want satisfactory levels of service that our ratepayers would be happy with for assets. So in quick reference would be roads. We don't necessarily, we know that having a perfect road on every road we have is probably not achievable, but we want satisfactory, so our ratepayers can see the value for money that we have. And I will stop for questions just a few times throughout, but if we go to page 4, the way that that's perfect spot there. The way that this document is designed is that each chapter, when we get to the assets, will answer these questions. So, and it's laid out in this order. So like what is in the category? Like what do we mean by land improvements? What type of assets or do we own? What are the assets worth? How old are the assets? What condition are the assets in? What life cycle activities are performed on the assets? So what do we do from a day-to-day or year-to-year basis to keep those assets in working order? What are the current and proposed levels of service? How much current risk do the assets pose? So in the condition they're at today, what type of risk do we have? What are the forecasted capital requirements for replacement? How can we actually finance that, or what does that look like if we stayed on top of replacing the assets when they're due? What does that look like? And then how can this section be, how can we improve? Because the asset management plan is as of a certain date. It's a living document. It's not it's not just sits there and then it's just magically done. It should improve every iteration. And then a couple thank yous to the asset management working group. So that was Mayor Bennett, Reeve Watt, Councillor Wren, our CAO, Dean, and then Mark, Manager of Public Works, and Brad Fott, Operations Supervisor. We held, I think, 4 or 5 meetings throughout since the spring till now to kind of go over each section and what that entailed. So special thank you to you. Municipal MFOA, so Municipal Finance Officers Association, they have an Amp It Up 3.0 program where staff were able to utilize this Israr fellow. He is from Public Sector Digest, where we had some hours with him. He's a professional, I believe he's an engineer, but asset management is his forte, and so he was able to look at our plan, provide feedback, and provide some direction at no cost to us. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities had many documents that I used, and same with Asset Management Ontario. So we just wanted to make sure that they were highlighted, that we got a lot of information and a lot of expertise from those organizations and groups. If we can just go to the executive summary, which starts, I guess, on page 6. So this just lays out a summary of the whole document, but if I can, on the 3rd paragraph, we have approximately $323,691,274 worth of assets, and this is what's called our current replacement value. You'll see throughout the document CRV. It means if we had to replace that asset today, what would that cost us? And that CRV is instrumental in our OCIF, so Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund grant. The Ministry of Infrastructure is looking at that CRV value as a key driver to their financial contribution to all municipalities. So really, how much worth of infrastructure did places own? That will help determine our share of their pie, basically, on that grant. So that is a something that the ministry takes extremely seriously. How you get to that CRV is up to each municipality. So what we did is, in each category, we tried to find replacement costs. Let's say it was per kilometer of paved road, what does that cost, or per square meter of building, or what was a recent tender on a truck, of different equipment categories, and that's how we came up with our current replacement values. So in any event, that's the number that we have come up with at this time. That equates to roughly $80,000 for each household in Laurentian Valley would have that much dollars worth of infrastructure assets. We have an annual funding gap of about $8.8 million, so or $2,200 per household. So we've traditionally funded, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I want to say in the last 4 years, on average, about $2 million of infrastructure replacement. That about $10 million would be if we were what we would need to spend in 2024 dollars to stay up to date each year, replacing assets as they become below a certain standard that we've determined as a group would be when they should be replaced. So a road, we've said, is 25 years. So if a road has not been rehabilitated for 25 years, to be at the end of its useful life, it would be due to be replaced kind of ASAP. So that is not uncommon through municipalities, so that's not something to be alarmed about. Many municipalities are in the same boat. It's infrastructure is expensive and becoming more expensive, and just as a side note, for that number, let's say, to go down, you would either need to fund more or change the expectation on assets. So that comes into the level of service, meaning, and just for illustrative purposes, not me saying this is what should happen or not, but it'd be like saying we have an average of good roads. We want to keep, instead of keeping an average of good roads, we're okay to say we want fair roads. Then that means the level of service maybe goes down. You replace roads maybe every 35 years, and then that number would that's how that push and pull kind of happens. So level of service is something that we will work to keep identifying and honing in on. If we were to continue investing in infrastructure at our current rate, that infrastructure gap would, in 25 years, would go to $222 million, or $55,000 per household. So it's important. What we're doing with the asset management plan is we're recognizing that that these assets do have finite lives, where they do reach an end of useful life and they will need replaced. And that takes some financial or a lot of financial commitment. And if we continued on the current trajectory we are now, it'd be estimated that gap's going to grow. And I'll show a graph in a little bit about that. But we're just trying to get a snapshot of where we are today, and look 25 years down the road and see where we might be. If we can go to page 7, please. This is the summary, and I'm not going to go through each section unless I'm directed to, but my plan wasn't to go through each section, but to give this kind of high-level snapshot of our assets, where they stand. So transportation is our biggest group, and that encompasses roads and street lights. And so about $225,000 worth of replacement value there. Our age is a bit hard for me to get to, because obviously the road has existed probably for a lot longer than 14.98 years. But what we've done is this year we had a street scan done to get our PCI on each road. We assumed then that when a road got to a 25 PCI, that it was at the end of its useful life. So a little math formula to say, well, if a road had a 60 PCI, where's that in its age trajectory if we're replacing them every 25 years? So that, because you may say, well, that seems weird, that, I mean, the roads existed forever, or we've had roads. That's how that number came about anyway. And then the average condition of our roads is they are in good, or where we stand today. And then we have an annual deficit of about, so this would be about 7.2 million. So we're saying that to replace the roads, we would have to increase our expenditures each year in road transportation assets by about 7.2 million. Drinking water, we can just go across quick, and I think the key metrics here are the current replacement value is about $25 million. It's mostly pipes in the ground. This is what it is, and we do have, and I lay out in the how many kilometers worth of pipe we have, but its average condition again isn't good, and you see our annual deficit here is much lower, about 331,000. Stormwater, we have culverts and pipes at about $10 million. They're in good condition. Wastewater assets, again, about $25 million, mostly pipes. We have a pump, some buildings and some structures where, like, pumping stations and whatnot. That is included in here and not in facilities. They're in fair condition. Facilities, that would be this building, any type of structures that are fairly large. I know, like, we have the sand domes in this. We have our recreation centers are in this category. We have that as in fair condition, and an annual deficit of about 611,000. Vehicles and heavy equipment, they're in good overall condition. I think the township is on a really good trajectory there with replacing. It seems the Public Works Department has a good system in replacing tandems every 2 years. That has been done very well and has kept that fleet in good condition. But that also includes some of our bigger equipment that moves. And then land improvements, that is smaller structures, fences, parking lots, that type of that nature of things. And this is the only category based on the last, I think it took 3 or 4 years of data, that we funded about $15,000 more than maybe what what the plan would have been calling for. So it's not very often you see that, okay? But that, I was a little shocked, and I checked my math a few times, and it came out that way. So that's a good thing. So that is in a nutshell, and I know that's quick, and there's a lot of literature behind everything, but that's in a nutshell of each asset category, kind of where it stands. If we can just go to this page quick, this is just a summary of what we just talked about for each class and its current replacement value. And I guess before we get into the financial strategy, I guess I'll turn it to Mayor Bennett if there's questions, but if we are speaking about the financial piece, that is the next section that I would speak to here. So if there's questions there, I'd hold them for that. But if anyone has questions on what we just spoke about.
Wendy?
I'm just trying to understand something. So you said for the CRV value, it's up to each individual municipality to come up with their own. So there isn't like a formula per se. So our township could have a completely different idea than the next township. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the method, I think the theory there is that if the province, which would help us for these plans, said, this is what it costs in Ontario to replace a kilometer of road, that would probably help. But I think the theory is that in some parts of Ontario, it may be a lot less than in other parts, and then therefore, in the parts that it's less, you're now overinflating it. So they have said, tell us what your current replacement value of your assets are. Have some sort of methodology behind it. Don't just pull it out of the air. So we've looked at tenders, and we've looked at some procurement documents to come up with a ballpark estimate.
Keith?
Thank you. You said that our OSIF grant is based on our current value or replacement value. What are they using now then if we're just coming up with this?
So the formula changed, I believe, 2 years ago. I mean, this might be year 3 of the new formula. It used to be based off of, and CRV is only one aspect of it. They look at your median household income, and there's a few other factors, but CRV is the big numerical factor. So I'll just clarify that. But what the Ministry of Infrastructure did was they said, we're going to send out this template. You fill it out to what you think your current replacement values are. Send it back in. If you don't have a asset management plan, we're going to look at what you've said, and we're going to take a look at your FIR that we were going off of, 2 or 3 years ago, and they're going to make their own assumption on our current replacement value. So because they've done that in a sense to try to smooth out as municipalities moved into the CRV, because I think year 1, many municipalities may not have had an up-to-date current replacement value, so they've got some formula where they've come up with it based on what we have submitted, because we have submitted documents to them saying here's what our estimate is, a year ago before we've done this plan, and then they've worked it out to the value they've assigned it based on historical financial statements that we've had.
So follow up. Once we submit this then, will they start using that, or is there a start date that they'll start using our asset management plan with all other municipalities?
So I believe when we submit this to them, they will use this plan with the caveat on, though, if something here throws them off where they thought maybe we would have had $150 million worth of assets, they might reach out and say, you need to clarify how you came up with 324, and they still hold the cards that they can use their own number. I believe anyway they could use their own number if they thought that we were, or other municipalities were, out of whack. Because what this new formula does, it's not audited, so they're not audited by, where if they were taking our financial statements, then you could at least say they're audited numbers. This isn't audited. These are management's submissions, management's assumptions. So in theory, places could inflate their current replacement value to potentially get higher dollars. However, they have said that they have mechanisms in place to take your outliers and however met, they're not sharing that formula to us, probably for good reason, that they would be able to drill down and then assign. So I think the reality is we've done honest work here in what ours is. And we hope that this is the number that they would at least come close to this and agreeing with us on our assets.
Thank you.
It would more than likely just compare municipalities across the province that are similar size to what we are. And if this one, sticks a thumb up, then that's the one we're gonna look at.
Yeah.
If there's something wrong, this one's way out as compared to all the rest kind of fit in the curve, but this one doesn't, or these 2 or 3 don't.
Yeah, and I think that comparison, I think that's a good point. I think the comparison goes beyond population. Like I think it would go into, you've got X kilometer paved road, somewhere has X kilometer paved road. So then if they're way different than us, they're the Ministry of Infrastructure, they're gonna know what is closer to reality. At least that's the hope. Okay. So we're good on that section? Okay, so just the next, and this will be the last section. Like I said, I'm not gonna go through the whole document, but I think the financial strategy, what we're chapter of financial strategy is just important to understand. If we can go to 3.1 there, that's perfect, Lori. So tax funded assets. So this is everything in the document except for wastewater and water, because the property tax pays for these assets. So in water and waste, drinking water and wastewater, it's the users of the system pay for that. So we have a whole different kind of budget for those. But when we talk tax funded, we're saying how much are we generating from these are paid for by property tax or grants, but mainly property tax. So this is the largest, obviously, group of assets, has the most, and our gap is about $8 million. You know, so it's not much different when you add in water and wastewater, but it's a little bit different. But we fund these assets through property tax either in the current year, reserve contributions, which is important to understand, is that's really can be broken down to just property tax in previous years that wasn't used. You could say that yes, we've sold, I'm trying to think, like fire permits. Let's say we did really well in fire permits and dog tags, and we budgeted, so that went to reserve. Okay, but the vast majority of it is you just think of it as we've taxed for that, but maybe we put it into reserve or didn't spend as much as we thought we were going to, so we put it into reserve. So it's really property tax from before. It's current year, and then from the year before is reserves. We have the Canada Community Building Fund, which is CCBF, that's the former gas tax. And then the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF. Those are the 4 kind of stable sources of funding. We didn't say, we don't have in here one-time grants. Yes, we're going to try to still apply for one-time grants. That would help out, but you don't take that into consideration because you just don't know if you're going to get it because it's not stable. These are relatively stable. We also didn't use debt in this because debt isn't necessarily a financing strategy. It's not revenue to bring the debt in. You still have to pay that debt back over time. So we didn't factor in debt, but we do know that for some projects, debt would be used, but you still have to pay that back over time. Anyway, we had to make assumptions, and I think these are important to know because the whole plan is based on assumptions, but you make them with the best intent. So, I'll kind of skip over 1 for a second, but and 1 and 2. But we know that our capital reinvestment reserve, you've heard, we do 1% of the previous year's levy the next year. So it's always growing at like 1%. To get to forecast out 25 years, I got to come up with what's operating going to grow by? Like what's realistic for operating to grow by? And the spreadsheet's a bit intense, but what we came up with was operating portion, if it grows by 4% year over year, and that's not 4% of the total, just 4% of what's operating grows at 4%. Operating grows at 4%, not capital contributions, okay? But that grows at 4%. The capital portion of the tax levy, so every year we fund some capital via property tax. So we don't transfer it into reserve and then pull back out. We say the property tax is going to pay for that truck or whatever it is. That would grow at a rate of 1%. We're going to assume that our gas tax, CCBF contributions will grow at a rate of 2%. OCIF, which we just got cut 15%. We hope now with an updated plan and continuously updating that we're going to assume that that's going to grow at 5%. Might be wishful thinking, but we're going to hope that happens. I have estimated what the 2025 capital reserve balance will be. And then I've made the assumption that we don't really ever want to dip below $500,000, similar to what we have right now for capital, but we don't ever want to dip below $500,000 in reserves for capital. So that's kind of our cutoff. And then I'm not going to factor in the backlog we're at today. We're just going to focus on what we had to replace from now to 25 years in this plan. So then I did the following scenarios. We're going to take 1% of the previous year's total levy, which is for capital reinvestment, which is our policy. I upped it to 3% to see where that falls, and then I have it at 4.79%. And I'm sure you can guess why 4.79% is there. Can you scroll to the next page, please? So this is the graph. If we continue on the trajectory at 1% of the previous year's levy with those assumptions, is that infrastructure gap. Notice that that is negative numbers. So that infrastructure gap gets bigger. That line at the top is if we got to 0, okay? So that doesn't really ever start to close. If you can go to the next one. You can see here, if we go to 3% from 1 to 3, yes, early on, it's still going to increase, which is kind of normal, but we're going to kind of peter off and start to get into that negative $80 million range. By year 25. So it does decrease and then stables a little bit, but we're always going to be in that gap. And then if you can go to the next one, please. This is if that grew at 4.79, based on today, it's going to drop significantly. It's going to stable, and then by year, by year 16 to 25, that increases quite substantially, and we start to close that gap. So that is, you're not committing by this plan, saying that's what you're going to do, and say to every council from now until 2049 that this is what you're going to do. But this is the picture you have today to close that gap based on the information that we have today. So under that scenario, just give me 1 second. The total levy in year 1 would increase by 8.15%. I can't remember we increased this year, but it was in the 8s, I think. I think we were lower, and then for the pool contribution, we upped it. And I think we're around the 8 something, if I remember correctly. Should know that, but I don't. And then year over year, it increases in the year 2025, that increase would be about 6.41%. So the biggest increase would be early, percentage-wise, and then it starts to dwindle down, and that's what would give us that 4.79 for capital reinvestment, 4% operating increase, et cetera, those assumptions. So that's kind of to understand that, because sometimes you might look at this and say, well, we're probably going to go up as 1,000,000%. Well, the reality is that, based on the assumptions, is what it would be, about between 6 and 8% for 25 years. That's the tax-funded assets. And I'll just go through the water and wastewater quick, similar idea, and then I'll take questions at that point. But for water, for drinking water, it's funded. You can go scroll down a little bit there. Yeah, that's good. It's funded by water rates and then water reserves, which is previous year's rates. Traditionally, we have not put gas tax or CCBF or OCIF contributions to water and wastewater. So it's really just funded by rates or grants or debt, but we haven't taken in the one-time grants or debt. So you'll see the assumptions we had to make here. Again, operating would grow at a constant rate of 4%. We would implement a 1%, similar to the capital reinvestment reserve we have now, like implement a 1% of the previous year's water levy to put that towards capital and let that grow over 25 years. No gas tax or CCBF, no OCIF contributions. We have a starting reserve balance. We're going to say we don't want water to go below 400,000, which is close to what we have now, and then the current backlog not factored in. And if you just go to the graph, what that would look like is a little bit opposite of the tax-funded assets. We're gonna grow our reserves. We're gonna be in a pretty good spot until about year 20. The plan in year 20 has a lot of calling for that year to be a lot to happen. Obviously, that's maybe not practical, but then it would drop down, and as you see by year 25, we're built back up to basically at zero. Okay, so that's what that would look like. And if we can just go down to wastewater, a little bit further, please. Wastewater is a similar story, except for right now we haven't traditionally taken, in the last 4 years anyway, the wastewater rate, and we haven't put that into really capital or reserve. So I'm kind of starting at a low spot. Because normally what I would do is say, well, if you've done 100,000, I'll build on the 100,000. But when there hasn't been that much recently put towards that, I'm starting at very small. So you got to go high early on and then peter down. And I think what I've done is, I think it was like a 30, my assumptions here are the operating for wastewater grow at 4%. The capital would grow at a constant, has to grow at a constant rate of like 33% of the previous year's wastewater levy. And I don't get too hung up on this. It's just know that it's calls for a big increase early. And then what that does is it shows, if you can go to that graph there, is again, you're building reserves till about year 20. There's large expenditures in that year 18 to 20 kind of area. And then by year 2025, you're back to almost at zero. That shows the year-over-year increase in the wastewater levy. It would be really big early and then dip right down to be back into year 5, around your 4 or 5% in year like 3 and beyond. But that's just a picture. What we have said in this financing strategy is that because you have to identify a way to close those shortfalls, that's what we have done here. It again doesn't mean that you're stuck to closing them that way. We also said though that realistically we're going to need provincial and federal help over the course of 25 years to effectively manage the assets. Like it may be unrealistic for the taxpayer and ratepayer in Laurentian Valley to be born with that. Like we probably are going to need some help from the upper levels of government. So we've identified that. I don't want you to go to this page, but just on next steps, we have said that we'll improve on this plan. It's right at the end. I wouldn't worry about it, Lori. We are going to hopefully at some point include our proportion of the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center and airport at some iteration. One thing we do need to do, or at least I'm going to try to propose it and see where we come with our budget, is we probably need a building condition assessment. I think buildings or facilities are the weakest part of this plan in terms of the data that we've had. I think if given maybe another year, I could have found documents with the help of staff, but the measurements and assumptions I've made, some of the measurements of the facility's footprint have been a ruler on a computer screen and doing the math on a scale, okay? But it gives us something and it's somewhere to start from. But grants purposes, a lot of them are calling for RET screens and understanding your efficiency. And I think that's something that we really probably need to look at sometime soon, whether it's 25 or 6. So I know it's a lot, and there's a lot in there, and I do apologize maybe you didn't get the whole thing like this the first go at it, but I'll turn it back if there's any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Great presentation. It really gives us an opportunity to look at the future and what needs to be done. Sean, I would assume at budget time that 1% capital reinvestment will certainly be re-looking at that, if possible, to double that up. I know we talked about it as a group, but we're going to have to take a step somewhere along the line. So I'm sure your recommendations will come in with those comments.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll build it first, and we'll see where we come out, and then I would present, options for council's consideration on this is what this looks like, this is what this looks like, and this is what 1% looks like. And then at that point, because we really have to, I've gotten everything back from staff, but I've been really focused on this, so I haven't dug in too much to the actual budget worksheets yet to see what it looks like, but we'll present that and give that to council for their consideration.
Alan?
And as discussed at the committee level, this is a living document, so it'll be updated every single year. It'll take into consideration inflation and so on and so forth. So every year it will be updated, and the numbers will be updated, and the plan will probably look different every time we look at it each year, so.
Yeah, my plan with that is at year end is when we're through the year in process, update the new capital that we've purchased or done, so we can update that. And then we'll look at, updating our current replacement values with the best information we have. That might mean that, one year we do roads and pipes, and then we get that up to date, and the next year maybe it's facilities and vehicles, but we'll update this on a continuous basis and with the best information that we have in time.
Brian and then Keith.
It looks like a big hit in the initial year for all of those different things. I'm just wondering if we can stagger that initial hit just so the taxpayer's not getting it all at one go. So you may have to look at which ones would have, delaying it a year would have the least effect down the road and try and ease
Yeah, and
that.
I think what we want to be careful of, again, that's a great point, and from a practical standpoint, we'll be doing that. We know we have to do that anyway. It's to build in the assumptions. We're just showing a picture, right? So we're just saying is if it's going to go at a constant rate, because we know we can do probably infinity assumptions on. Maybe we grow quick first 5 and then taper, or taper and then grow hard. There's so many different options of how you would grow that graph, But definitely from a practical standpoint, staff realize that we got to evaluate. And just because the research I've done, and with Mark and Brad and Dean and the group, a point gets brought up that vehicle says it should be replaced today. Well, and we want to work towards, that's great, but just because it has this many kilometers on it, maybe that's a really good vehicle and we actually don't replace it now, just because the graph said we should. What we need to get to a point is with our data collection, you'll see multiple times through the document about collecting data, how much is our maintenance cost on that vehicle versus what it would cost to get in. Like there's those exercises that we still have to do and that will happen. It's just hard to capture in a document such as this, but every iteration we hope to improve and implement that kind of stuff.
Keith?
Sean, I just want to say congrats. I think you did a great job putting all this together. Read through it twice on the weekend, and I think it's well explained. And if rest of council, if they missed anything tonight as they go through the booklet, I think it'll answer their questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, good job, Sean.
Thank you.
Motion, please.
Motion, Alan and Wendy.
Moved by Councillor Wren, second by Councillor Hewitt, that the council approve the 2024 asset management as presented.
All in favor? Report motion, Snowmobile Club. Dean? Or Mark?
Yeah, Mark kind of.
Good evening, Mayor Bennett and members of council. This report tonight is for entering into agreements with the Timberline Snowmobile Club and the Keaton Snowmobile Club for portions of their trail that cross unopened road allowances throughout the township. For most part, these crossings have been in place for many years, but there hasn't been a formal agreement put in place for them. And it's essentially where their trail networks cross unopened road allowances between private landowners and in Crown land. They've kind of updated their mapping system, and it's starting to kind of flag some of these small pieces. So so the agreements are based on that. The township does have similar agreements in place with the snowmobile clubs for some of our unopened road allowances. That includes Xanders, where a bridge went in for the snowmobile club that connects it through to Walford Road, and we have a section that leaves the Allison Fraser Four Seasons Trail property kind of through the unopened road allowance on Sandy Beach and back out. The approvals would be subject to the clubs entering into a license agreement, which they did provide to us. It also notes about $5 million comprehensive liability insurance that they need to provide to us as well. And there are maps and shows the locations of their trail networks that were provided to us by the Snow Country office that show the locations where these crossings would be. So essentially, these are for anywhere where their trails cross a 66-foot unopened road allowance in those portions throughout the township.
Okay, any questions for Mark? Seeing none, motion?
Yes, please.
Brian and Keith.
Moved by Counselor Hughley, second by Reeve Watt, that the council approve the request from the Timberline Snowmobile Club of Allison Fraser and the Keaton Club Snowmobile Club, subject to entering into a lease agreement in the form of a memorandum of understanding, prescribed snowmobile trail land use permission with the Township of Laurentian Valley, including requirement for insurance as outlined in the agreement and forward bylaw 2024-10-050 and 2024-10-051 to authorize the mayor and the CEO to enter in a lease agreement with the snowmobile clubs as it's attached to this report to the bylaw portion for passing.
All in favor? Carried?
One question, Steve.
Al?
Do we have similar agreements on the portion of the, that we just purchased?
Well,
Or
that'll
will
be-
we wait because
It's
gonna
county,
get
it's
turned
been
over to
transferred to county, they'll be doing the leases from now
Okay.
for that portion.
Bylaws.
Motion.
Alan and Jennifer.
Moved by Counselor Gaucher, moved by Counselor Wren, second by Counselor Gaucher, that the following bylaws be enacted and passed and be read a first, second, and third time and be numbered and signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation and be engrossed in this bylaw book this 22nd day of October 2024. Bylaw 2024-10-050, enter in a lease agreement with the Timberline Snowmobile Club of Allison Fraser, and bylaw 2024-10-051, enter in a lease agreement with Keaton Snowmobile Recreation Club.
All in favor? Carried? Council acknowledgements. Alan?
So it was mentioned earlier that this municipality helped support the ability to bring 2 doctors to the area. I can tell everybody that those 2 doctors have come to the area, so in my opinion, it was money well spent by this municipality. And also, thanks to those doctors coming, I now, and both of my daughters and 4 of my grandchildren all have a family doctor. So it's good news for the area.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Dean?
No, you would.
I was just gonna mention, some of you may not notice that Hawthorne Bridge has come down. So we did have concerns there for liability, et cetera, but the owners have taken it down. They're about, I think both bridges are gone and they're working on the walls now, so. Should be done, Mark, by tomorrow or next day.
Just 2 announcements from my standpoint. The Volunteer Appreciation Holiday Party, which will be held at Shady Nook on the December 12th. So you can put that in your calendar. It's for all rec volunteers and then they will, do a bit of a ceremony. We'll be handing out some service awards, as well as they'll be receiving volunteer goodie bags, as we've done in the past. And then the following night is the staff Christmas party, again, back at Shady Nook. And invitations will be going out for staff, council, and spouses if they're wanting to attend. From what I understand, I can read this, there'll be a slate full of games, I guess, is what they're doing. Everyone will randomly be put on team and play a series of games. With the highest score will receive a gift. So practice your games. I can't tell you what they are, because I don't know, but that's what the party will consist of. So that's 2 evenings anyway, and they are back to back, but we kind of, this is the dates that we got, 12th and 13th.
I'm sorry, the time on the 12th?
Well, the 12th, I did circle it. I have 6 to 8 here, but I don't know and if anybody can remember, I don't know if we waited that long from, I thought it was more 5 to 7, eh? Yeah,
Or 5 to 8, maybe.
well, that's maybe a little
I think
long,
it was
because it's
5
just
to
a
8.
meet and greet. Anyway, we'll check and see what it was last year, but we'll confirm that anyway with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark, can I just ask a quick question on that Hawthorne Bridge? So they've taken away the bridge as mentioned, and I guess cement walls are coming down. Will we then still, there's no blockage required anymore, right? From our end of it?
No, we have installed barricades and some signage reflective markers just so people aren't entering into that area.
Okay.
So if a ATV, something does go through, we have put some barricades and concrete bollards, reflective markers and such, sort of where the unopened road allowance would take you down to Hawthorne Lane. We put stuff there, thinking that they're potentially on that unopened road allowance it's owned by the county of Renfrew, but that could potentially be a connection link there. So we have protected our side, so there is something.
And Timberline has looked at it as well, right? As to go around it, or no?
I know I've had some discussions with Terry Vaudry at the Snow Country office about some ways around there. Where we ended the trail is where they previously brought the snowmobile trail out, but I think in the past 2 seasons they've been using a farmer's gate back a little ways, so I'm not sure if they'll continue to use that gate or use that crossing, but it'll, this at least gives the snowmobile club and potentially the ATV club an access point if they use that county's on open road allowance to get down to Hawthorne Lane and access to Drive-In Road, and keeps them off the private owned section that goes through the city.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council? Keith?
MTO did some pave-over work there in front of the Home Depot in that area. There's still one section when you're coming west off the ramp from Quebec that past Keymac that's still pretty rough. I guess they didn't consider that was in poor enough condition.
Guess not, I don't know. No, they never really commented on the pieces they did, they just came.
They did do some work along the shoulder there, they put a bunch of gravel, and, because there was always water laying there in the whole bit. But the last rainfall we got, there was water there again.
Yeah. No, I've been over it a couple of times and it's still a little bit rough, but just thought I'd
It's certainly better, and it's certainly one of the requests that we did have, and I thank them for that. One of the many requests, so maybe it's a step in the right direction. We'll see. Anything else? Motion to go into closed.
Wait a second.
Jennifer and Alan.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor Wren, that the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 move into closed session at 6:25. Chaired by Mayor Bennett according to Ontario Municipal Act 2001, Section 239.2, Section 239.3, Section 239.3.1, in order to address a matter pertaining to proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality or local board.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll take 3 or 4 minutes. Council meeting, Dean,
Motion to move back in, please.
Jennifer and Alan.
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Counselor Wren, that the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 move back in open session at 7:10.
All in favor? Carried. Note and file motion, Brian and Keith.
Moved by Counselor Ugly, second by Reeve Watt, that the item not specifically addressed by motion of council in the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 be noted and filed accordingly.
All in favor? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw, Jennifer and Wendy.
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Counselor Hewitt, that be it resolved that the council of the Township of Laurentian Valley approves confirmatory bylaw 2024-10-052 as having been introduced, read a first, second, and third time, and the said bylaw be numbered and signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with seal of corporation this 22nd day of October 2024.
All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Alan and Keith.
Moved by Counselor Wren, second by Reeve Watt, that the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2024 be adjourned at 7:10.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.